Hello, it's Jack Tutor here of Attention Magazine. Welcome to Crucial Listening, podcast where I speak with musicians and sound artists about 3 albums that are important to them. My guest this time is Matt Cargill of Sly and the Family Drone, a band I first encountered in 2012 at Supernormal Festival in Oxfordshire. They played a set where they were in the centre of the audience. The audience kind of formed a large ring in this field. And then they just started handing out drums to the crowd. They made this almighty scree of noise. They had everyone playing percussion and getting involved. And since then I've come to know them as a band that just has such an incredible, dynamic and responsive relationship to the spaces in which they play and perform. It's like they're attuning themselves to the air and to the walls and to the people present. Each time is utterly different when I see them. And generally there's a lot of clambering on amplifiers and again a lot of percussion being handed out into the crowd, people getting involved, sort of fluid relationship with the audience and the band. Like everyone just becomes occupants of that noise and occupants of that space. And on record as well, I think what's astounding is obviously you can't have the participatory element of the live shows, but the sense of space again is absolutely immaculate. So the new album by Sly and the Family Drone, Gentle Persuaders, sounds like you're in the room with them. Like the drums are absolutely huge. You've got this wonderful saxophone which is being modulated through noise. You've got so much open space into which everything reverberates and everything kind of rebounds. It's a really incredible experience, and I think they have the potential to be an incredibly loud and utterly cathartic band, but it's the means by which they restrain that and hold it back and then finally let forth at the moment that feels precisely right, which always makes them such a incredible listen. So you can check out Gentle Persuaders and many more releases by Sly and the Family Drone over at familydrone.bandcamp.com. And that's about it. I had a great time with Matt's picks and a lovely time with Matt generally talking to him. We go back a few years now and grew up in the same vicinity of the UK. So there's references to janky old noise gigs in small cramped spaces in Hampshire and Bournemouth. So enjoy that. All right. Without any further delay, Matt Cargill on Crucial Listening. You get the idea of how it works. So I just start by asking a few questions about whatever's going on currently. So we talk about the new album.
Yeah, it is out now. I've just seen some people posting things to say they actually received it, which is always nice. Yeah, first time working with these people, but they were really keen and did a lot of good stuff previously. And normally they put out like Gabba records or whatever, pretty odd sort of electronic dance music. Love, and a lot of producers and sort of solo electronic people. And then they approached us, like, do you want to do something? And it's sort of it's come together really well. But there was a bit of a delay with the pre-orders and stuff, but it seems like it's in a couple of shops and people are, it's nice to see it getting out there because people putting up photos of the vinyl and you can see the artwork and sort of gauge what people are making of it. So it's cool that it's out and people are reacting to it, and it's sort of when the big day comes and the release date, and I like went on Apple Music or whatever, and there it was. I was like, yeah, great. And then now what happens? It's like nothing. There's like, oh, good. And we've been sat on that record for ages, so it's like it's done now. So nice. We'll see. Yeah. But hopefully people will buy the vinyl off us at at gigs as well.
So when you say you've been sat on it for a while, so when was it recorded?
It was recorded end of 2017, I think. And we had we recorded it at New River ourselves. Well, I recorded it and mixed it, just playing in the main live room all together. Just did a couple of takes and then sort of smashed it into shape. And then we were kind of sat on it for a while. Had hawked it around a little bit, and then had a year off because of all the stuff that happened. It took a while for it to come together, really, but it sort of was done and forgotten about. And then I listened back to it the other day. I was like, oh yeah, that's on that record, because we've done another one since. So that we've got another one mixed and mastered and ready to go. And that's So there's always this sort of, people have release schedules and, or haven't got the money or whatever. So you're sort of at the mercy of other people as well. But I also don't want to bombard people with, you sort of have to wait and, play that sort of game a little bit. But no, it's fine. But it was recorded a little while back now, and mostly forgotten about.
I mean, how's that distance kind of affected how you sort of this music, how it sits with you and how you're thinking about it? Because I know with anything that I've made and left for a year, suddenly get this like space of retrospect to really ingest the whole thing. So has that changed much? I had forgotten a lot of the content, really, but actually going back to it, I enjoy what we've done. Definitely. I think it sounds cool, and I'm really pleased with it. And then there've been a couple of bits played on sort of either people's radio shows or podcasts or whatever, and then when you hear it sort of out of context, alongside other stuff, like, hang on, is this us? It sounds kind of familiar, or I'm like, oh wow, what's it? Sounds cool, and then like, oh wait, it actually is us, and it's kind of a pleasant surprise. So, some people sort of don't want to listen to their own music, like, or they sort of want to kind of put that distance between themselves. But I do quite enjoy listening to my own music. Well, I do as well. I mean, I kind of was. That's why I left Last FM. I was cooking my own stats a bit.
Well, bumping the plays up. It's funny. Like I don't really get why people don't. Like, oh, I never, watch myself or listen to my own whatever. And it's like, well, I do kind of understand that people, want to say it's done, it's out there, that's it, and never sort of come back to it. But with a bit of kind of distance and then coming back to it, you can. And if it's you still think it's good, then it's all right, I think.
Totally. I guess maybe it's with some people there's perhaps a sort of self-analysis that never switches off, where it's like, oh Christ, now I want to redo those takes. So it's more agony than it's worth, or something.
I just find that sort of way of working just absolutely impossible, because you'd never get anything done.
Right.
When you sort of, and you probably have had this with people sort of talking about it on the show, that if you sort of just are that hypercritical and so restless with stuff and you can't let it go, you will just never be satisfied or complete. I think I do like that sort of idea of a document of a time and a place, and it's done, and then get it over and done with and get the next thing out. Like, why, what are you striving for?
Right.
Because if you're that sort of intensely obsessed with it, you're never going to be satisfied or be able to move forward, I don't think. It's like, what are you striving for? Like, artistic perfection is just an impossible task. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I mean, speaking of it being a document of a time and place, obviously it's a little time ago now, but I mean, I should say, for one, absolutely loving the record to bits. And
thank you very much.
There always seems to me, I mean, certainly my experience of you, I always get such a strong sense of the room whenever I'm listening to a record you've done. I mean, the drums sound utterly immaculate on the release. There's also so much kind of wide open space, and I feel like your records kind of almost map out the spaces that they're in. It's almost like a sonographic projection of the space in which they're recorded. But how much can you remember of putting the record together, those sessions, and what it felt like in the midst of doing it?
It felt good. It was a time, I think, when we had been playing quite a lot and sort of coming off the back of some festivals and things, and it felt good that we wanted to record there and then. But yeah, it's not. So the previous release we put out was actually a live show, like a live at Cafe Otto, from a few years back, and that felt like a really good one and worked nicely as a release. That was all cool. But this one, whilst it was all playing live together in the same room, it is a studio recording, and I think there is a distinction between the two. It's not just like there's a gig, chuck some mics around, that's a record. Right. There's a bit more sort of consideration to it, and that so I had sort of thought about my mic selection and placement, and to try and get a good sound in the room. But it is important in terms of a performance for us, I think, to all be playing live. I think it'd be quite impossible to do the sort of thing, like the guitarist goes in and lays down some licks, and then the bass player does his parts, or whatever. It does. We're not a band that sort of is able to do that. So I think the performance and actually playing together and improvising together is an important sort of aspect of it, and that helps get good results for the recorded piece.
Yeah,
I think.
I don't know if this is true, but from listening, it sounds like that perhaps there's some kind of like visual cueing going on, because there's such a synchronization in terms of when you're all, exploding. I mean, how is it you're coordinating the? There
are sort of, it's semi improvised. So there are elements that can change or move, or you play a part longer, or whatever feels good in that moment. But some bits had either come out of sort of live shows that it's quite organic, and those bits will develop over time, or through playing together more, or whatever felt good that night, and then we might try it again, and then it becomes a sort of a piece, or a track in its own right, and then we maybe would do a couple of takes of a similar thing, and then go, oh yeah, that's the take, and that becomes the track. So there are that we do have sort of, even if it's just a little nod, or we know where it's going. I think we've been playing long enough together to know who's doing what and where I think we want to go. So that all works. But I will say this is our first one with James Allsop playing baritone sax, which is, he's absolutely incredible. But so this is the first proper document with him playing on it as a 4-piece, and we started playing with him like New Year's Eve 2016, I think. And he's an incredible musician, and played with, like, he'll like go off and play with pretty straight up sort of jazz stuff, or go on tour with as a session musician, or he was in Jamie Cullum's sort of orchestra.
Wow.
like it was some real pretty amazing, wildly varied discography. You should look him up. I don't know if you've seen him play before, but he plays in Snack Family as well, Dave Story Trio, like loads of jazz ensembles.
Oh, great.
But a lot of sort of great improvising with us. But yeah, he's incredible, and that's I do feel like that the four of us now is the core sort of lineup.
Yeah. I mean, what is it? I don't know if this is easy to articulate, but what is it about James's playing in particular that, in the context of Sly, that really
he's
connects
just
with you?
an absolute monster. He's just incredible, and he, it is. We did an interview recently whereby we'd all selected some tracks as well, and his choices, and we actually a lot of the others all sort of described it all more in sort of abstract terms, and it was like the texture and sort of feeling and atmosphere. They're more sort of important things than the musicality as such.
Yeah.
And James was like, it's dense and oppressive, much like Sly. And I was like, well, that's his sort of amazing little insight into what he thinks about, his performance and our music, which is totally great.
Yeah. Should say at this point, if people want to check out the record for themselves, where's the best place for them to do that online?
Probably off of Bandcamp. Kaz, the drummer Kaz, put up a thing the other day. He was like, the record's out, get it on Spotify or Apple. And I was like, but you could buy it from us and then we'll actually get some money. So it's on all available streaming platforms, but if you want to get it off Bandcamp, on download, if that's how you choose to live your life, or buy it off of us at a gig, which is better.
Nice. Nice hierarchy of
that's how it should be.
Yeah. So you've brought 3 important records, Matt, to the table. One question that I tend to ask is how you thought about the term important when picking your list. So I mean, was there a particular way that you interpreted or thought about that term in order to come up with the 3 records that you brought today?
It was really hard to choose, actually, because that term important is it can mean so many things, to so many different people, and how you sort of interpret that. I did try to sort of think of it in context of Sly and not necessarily myself.
Okay.
Even though they're important in sort of Sly's foundation and sort of where we're at, I think, but also they are really sort of favourite records of mine anyway. But I could have just listened. I don't have like a favourite album as such. And when I've listened to your sort of other shows, people have had, I was listening to like Lasse's show, and I was like, he's talking about Pink Floyd. I was like, I don't have a Pink Floyd.
Right.
Like, probably Nirvana or Black Sabbath for my Pink Floyd. That's about it. But I don't think necessarily either of those bands influence sort of my musicality or anything. I just think they're totally rad bands. I don't particularly have a favourite as such anymore.
No. Yeah, no, something that I've felt kind of waning as I've ingested more and more music. Things the love starts to disperse a bit more across different bands.
Yeah, and I don't. Somebody asked me the other day, like, why I like Black Sabbath so much, and I'm not into metal, or whatever that came after. I don't really like guitar music, but just Black Sabbath are just like fucking incredible. There's no irony involved at all. I just think they're absolutely great, but I don't like much other music from the era. I'm not it's just them, but I don't know what it is that I dig on so much. Not sure. It's just doing boogies, that's it.
Yes.
There you go.
Well, let's dive into the 3 picks that you brought today. If you'd like to pick whichever one you want to go with first, give me the name of it and a little bit about why it's important to you as well.
Okay. Well, let's go with This Heat first, because when Sly was becoming, or sort of getting ourselves together and sort of finding our way, we were playing as a 2-piece, just me and a different drummer, Toby Jackson, who is from Fleet. if anyone is familiar of the Hampshire-Surrey border towns. It raises a very particular kind of person, and he is one of them, as am I.
Yes.
But yeah, so we got to play at the, I think I'd just moved to London first time round, and we were playing at the Bird's Nest in Deptford, and we played with Albert Newton, which was Charles Hayward, Harry Beckett, John Edwards and Pat Thomas, and it was totally blinding, like improvised amazing music. And I knew Charles's music through listening to This Heat, and sort of at the time when I was coming up to London and sort of meeting new bands and making friends through that, I'd sort of got turned on to This Heat and was really hyped to be playing with Charles, and I'd never met him and I'd never seen him perform live. So I bought up my copy of Deceit, and I got him to sign it, which I still have.
Wow.
And I think that record just it was really inspiring to watch him play and to listen. Like, obviously he's absolutely incredible drummer, and you know that record just sort of reminds me of a sort of a new way of listening to stuff and like performance and composition, I think, rather than just sort of listening to. It's got so many different elements. These sort of like weird post-punk, like incredible rhythms, you know, tape noise, sort of weird electronics, which, you know, are all some of my favourite things in this really sort of quite bleak, sort of grim sounding amazing songs. And yeah, not that you know, those songs or sort of the outcome is particularly the sound as such is influential on what we do. Well, there's not a direct comparison, but I do find it inspiring, and to listen back to that record again recently, because I better do my research and go back to it. And it's just still, yeah, it still blows me away. And I saw This Is Not This Heat when they sort of first did their thing. I think, was it the Barbican or South Bank or something,
right?
I think maybe Queen Elizabeth Hall even, and it was just absolutely devastating. It was just like, yeah, hearing A New Kind of Water, I was just in bits, man. It was amazing. Like, you know, and not a lot of music has that sort of impression on me. I was like, yeah, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one is a. It's important to me because it reminds me of putting on shows with friends and sort of gathering people together to make Sly a thing, and that was one of the sort of first gigs that made me think, yeah, I want to be playing these kind of shows and with these sort of weird bands.
It's interesting you picked this one. So my familiarity with This Heat was the self-titled record. I think that was it, you know. I hadn't heard Deceit before, but this I found really compelling. I mean, from what I understand, and I haven't had loads of familiarity with either record really, but this seems to be a bit more kind of almost song-centric than the self-titled one. I mean, is there something kind of distinctive about Deceit, say, compared to the other material, where this is the one that stands out?
Well, sort of going back to it now, and what I'd heard sort of since, I think my favourite is the Peel Session stuff.
Right.
I don't know if you've heard that, but there's a mixture of kind of both of those kind of eras, and obviously it's not a long period of time between the two, and it's, you know, a bit sort of scrappier and yeah, just hearing that all together, I was like, wow, this is an incredible collection. But that track Horizontal Hold off of the previous record is absolutely mint, and I kept listening to it off of the Peel Session because that particular version, and I will say actually that track is more inspiring to what Sly are sort of doing now sonically, you know, that and hearing some of the other ones off of the self-titled album, it's like, oh, actually, now I go back to it, I do probably find that sonically more kind of appealing. But
right,
I think Deceit, you know, talking of that thing of like a document of a time and a place, yeah, that's the one that stands out. But yeah, there's some amazing songs on both, and that Peel session sort of captures both really well.
Nice. And because the thing that I find with Deceit, and again talking about the fact of it as a document, is you've got this really variable fidelity throughout the whole thing, which depending on like what the record is or what the band is or the situation, I have like an oscillating relationship with those kind of records where the fidelity is so variable. I mean, some albums I find it quite distracting because you're just like, okay, I just want to slot into this single context and have it carry me through from start to finish. But other times it's got its own intrigue to it to have all these different ways that it manifests. I mean, where does it sit with you?
I hadn't actually ever particularly picked up on that. I think when it becomes more obvious, for certain albums, it's like, it sort of just reminds me, like if someone's gone, oh yeah, bonus content, here's a like naff sounding outtake, or you know, like a practice recording or something, and they've just like slammed it on there like a compilation. Which kind of I don't really dig on that idea of compiling a record. You know, I feel like albums sort of should be an entire thing, and not just a collection of random sort of elements. Yeah, and in fact, putting on Deceit, I put the wrong side on first because I was like, then there's no way it's sequenced like that. So either I'd been listening to it wrong forever, and then so I had to look it up and like look at the the track listing properly. So I was like, is What Sleeps the first track? That's weird.
Yeah.
I always felt like that comes halfway through.
No way.
And it wasn't until I'd bothered to look it up properly that I don't know, that was just the way I'd always put the record on for some reason.
Oh, wow.
Which is quite a cool way of, you know, when I suppose that doesn't happen to a lot of, when you download an album or whatever and play it out, you know, through start to finish. That's just how it plays.
Yeah. So what do you do from here? Do you go to the...
I don't know. It's changed everything.
Yeah.
It's thrown it out. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, is there a particular track on Deceit which is a favourite?
Oh man, I mean, I do like Paper Hats is beautiful. A New Kind of Water absolutely smashes me to bits. I do really like Makeshift. I like all of them. They're great. They're just, you know, they're quite. I love like Charles's voice when he does this incredible scream. I think on Makeshift Swahili, and I was like, wow, this is like super raw. And you can hear his voice breaking up and stuff. Like, yeah, this is incredible. And then there's, you know, quite. And the contrasting voices between the two of them, just amazing. But yeah, it's all great. I'll say that.
Nice. Great, well, let's go to your second record now then, Matt. If you could give me the name of it and a bit about why it's important as well.
Yeah, again, with these ones, I was sort of trying to go through so many bits and try and pick out one. And there are so many sort of different elements to the... I guess that... Let's go with Mind Flayer, this next one.
Cool.
I was just trying to think, and I was like, yeah, who have I chosen and what am I going to do with that? Okay. So the Mind Flayer, and as a quick aside, this week I got through like basically one of my holy grail records, which is the Mind Flayer Dye and Mold services, which I'd never had. So obviously, and I remember when I seeing them, you've got the pink one and the green one. And I never owned the green one, Dye and Mold services. So the pink one was my choice because I own it, and I was like, oh yeah, I want to choose records that I do actually own. Because otherwise it seems like I've just made it up, and I could just pick anything. Right, so I was like, I thought it was important to have, to talk about records I do actually own and have listened to. So let's go with Mind Flayer. But that in particular, I mean, I guess I came to them, as I'm sure a lot of people did, through Lightning Bolt. And it would be remiss not to mention Lightning Bolt, but basically anything Load Records have ever done it just seems amazing. and again, getting into stuff on Load, really reminds me of a time that was very exciting for my younger self, coming up to London, going to gigs at Barden's or some weird East London like shithole to see these American bands that I had never had a chance to see before. People like Upset the Rhythm putting stuff on. There's that classic Lightning Bolt show that I think that was at Barden's, one of the first times they came. And just that, I don't know what it was, if they just built a relationship with those sort of American bands or whatever, and they would always play for Chris and Claire, and it was just totally mint. It just blew my mind and opened me up to so much other stuff. But here in Mind Flayer in particular, it's not as immediate as Lightning Bolt, because you've not got the sort of the riffs, I suppose. Right. You've not got the immediacy of like Gibson's, totally rad bass playing. You're like, wow, that's a bass line, but somehow it sounds like a motorbike or whatever. It's a bit weirder, and it's a bit, but it like what you were saying about the sort of fidelity of the recording. It doesn't sound amazing. It's all so blown out and like mental sounding, just absolutely wild. But it's not, it's sort of how I feel about guitars as well, and why I don't like using, don't want to use them in Sly. I want to sort of be able to make different sound sources out of sort of more abstract things, because you can, with a synth or a guitar, you can just, there's always that note you can go to, or you sort of, a chord shape or whatever, and you're going to get that sound. But with sort of more abstract kind of electronics, I think you can, there's a lot more sort of element of unpredictability, and like sometimes I don't even know how I made that sound, but it's happened. And then to try and apply that in a context of a band, so they're still sort of like playing like Lightning Bolt. You still got Chip and Dale like going absolutely wild on the drums and this incredible sound, but what Matt Brinkman's doing is these absolutely mad kind of electronics. You're not even sure what it is. You're like, oh yeah, that's an oscillator or something. But it's just the way that they're played together and these absolutely amazingly wild sounds. I was like, wow, this is, what even is this? And I listened back to some of it again yesterday. I was like, man, this is still absolutely rinsing and really powerful. And I was like, I like that. I'm gonna do a thing like that.
So just to double check, because I think you put in the email to me, Take Your Skin Off is the album you picked. Yes.
There was like Expedition to the Area Peaks as well, which is I think a lot longer. Or probably maybe only came out on CD or something. Which I remember having on my old iMac in around like 2006 or something.
Same.
And just absolutely rinsing that quite hard. Whenever or however I got hold of this Take Your Skin Off, I think it was released on Bulb but or maybe I got it through Load or something. Anyway, it arrived once upon a time, and I've still got the record. And I listened to it again the other day and was like, yes, this is absolutely smashing it.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Just wild. I was they've got the sort of the triggers on the drums, but just these incredible powerful sounds. Like, wow, this is and I suppose I just never heard anything like it. That's very exciting.
Because I think that's the thing, you talk about sort of the relinquishment of control that comes with not using something that has distinct notes and a sort of reliable means of reproducing sound. Those triggers sound like, I think they've always felt like such a huge part of that, in that Matt Brinkman can only really control, the texture, what is felt, not necessarily the pattern in which it is felt. So it's like it's almost like he's under his Brian Chippendale's mercy to a certain extent as to how his sound manifests.
I don't know if there were two sort of independent sources, or if Brinkman's processing the triggers on Chippendale's stuff, or like if it's going through each other or what. But the source, I do like the idea that the source isn't identifiable, and that's we do that in Sly. Like the drum source goes through something else, or the sax is going through all of Ed's stuff, or we're all sort of linked or swapping over in some way. And that I like the idea that you can hit a drum acoustically, but then when it goes to all this other stuff and then it comes out of a speaker, it's sort of transformed in some way, and wouldn't necessarily sound like a drum hit. Which I think is totally great.
So this is going to sound like a complete detour, but I promise it'll come back. Do I remember, did you work in HMV in Basingstoke at any point?
I did, yeah.
Right.
It was not a particularly amazing time. I think it was during one of the administration things, and it was just totally grim, and there wasn't, I didn't enjoy the job very much. The only small bit of enjoyment was making friends with the guy that ordered stock in, and he would get vinyl in that he knew how to get it, basically.
He was the guy.
And it was sort of that weird time where I remember going in to HMV in Basingstoke before it moved, or no, when it used to be Virgin or whatever up the hill, and then HMV opened in the festival place, and they did stock vinyl when it first opened, and they did have a set of Technics in there so you could go and listen to. And I remember they'd like wrap the head shell in wire or like tape and like cable ties and stuff, so people wouldn't nick the head shells, like the needles. But obviously they always did. And then just meeting people in there that worked there, and just that incredible thing of going into a record shop, like, oh wow, there's someone in this town that likes music, or and I didn't meet you until you were moving away, I think.
That's right.
I was like, oh, where have you been like all these years? Not knowing each other, but there was someone around that is, into that similar stuff.
Well, this is why I bring it up. So I went in, this must have been about 2006. So for listeners who don't know, I lived in Basingstoke as well, and I reckon this must have been about 2006, 2007, and I went up to, I think it was like the metal bit, because that was where I go for most of the stuff, and there was a CD there that said Mind Flayer, and beneath it there was an extra sticker that said Lightning Bolt Side Project with loads of exclamation marks.
Wow, there you go.
Was that you?
I don't think it would have been. No, I think that was before my time. So it was obviously somebody else that knows who they are.
Wow.
Who could that have even been? I don't know.
Right.
That's a total mystery. I wish I did know who it was.
Yeah.
Because we would have been good friends. The only person, and certainly from around that time, that I can think is Dave Morrison, if you know Dave, who is a good friend of mine. He now lives in Oxford, but when sort of growing up, and he worked in there and would like be able to source some vinyl. He's a couple of years older than me, and worked in there way before I did, but he could source, you know, I remember he got me like a Stone's Throw compilation or something, you know, years and years ago. Totally great. And then we ended up going to, I think I went to the first ATP I went to together with him.
Oh, nice.
And there was a crew from Basingstoke that went. The first year I went was 2005. Was that the First and More one, I think? Well, no, the Mars Volta one, I think, was the first one I went to.
Right.
Wow. I can't quite remember the timeline now, but just around that time as well, you're sort of talking about 2005, 2006 was such a sort of game-changing time. Like 2002, I went to like Reading Festival, like got my GCSEs, went to, my mum drove me straight to Reading Festival, like great, massive bag full of all the food and drink for the weekend. Like, you don't know anything about going to Reading, you've got it all, your mum's made you your sandwiches, let's go. Yeah. And then obviously it's just a wreck. And I think but that year, like, that was incredible that year as well. And everyone says this about Reading, it was like, oh, it's shit now, which it obviously is. Yeah. But like Trail of Dead played, and like the Icarus Line, like a Caracol, 80s Matchbox.
Whoa.
What I think Soul Wax as well were pretty amazing, and the Streets, and loads of other stuff that I've forgotten, but I just remember that bill being totally amazing. But then, through going very quick timeline here, the sort of jump between 2002 to 2005, and the sort of getting so massively into music, and I think I went to see McCluskey at the Garage. So had left, you know, was still living in Hartley Wintney, so tiny little village, travelling up to London, being like, I don't know, 15, 16, 17. Yeah. Going to see McCluskey because they were the only band I knew, and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs opened. What? So out comes Karen O, like pouring Stella on herself, like on everyone else. Like, I remember she was wearing these like real skinny like grey jeans, and then obviously they become like totally black and wet with Stella. Wow. And then them just gunning out their set, you know, real short, being totally amazing, and then disappearing. I was like, well, McCluskey are just going to be nothing now. And I still love like that band, but just seeing that first, I was like, wow, okay. And then so McCluskey played, totally amazing, and then Liars headlined. What? So fuck? After that, I was like, what even is this bill? And who are this band? And I'd never heard of Liars before.
Oh my god!
And then after that, they just were like my favourite band forever. And it was very difficult to not choose Drums Not Dead as my choice for this as well.
Oh wow!
But that is just a very small opportunity to talk about that, because that's still one of my favourite records. And you know, at the time, Liars, when they were coming to England in those sort of early days, they were like a 4-piece still, and doing their sort of weird post-punk stuff, and doing like Mr. You're on Fire, Mr. and stuff. And then they obviously, and I followed them all through that, saw them loads when they came to England, and then They Were Wrong came out, and it was, you know, all the sort of folkloric kind of great backstory stuff, and then and amazing songs as well, but a lot more sort of weird sounds on that. And then Drums Not Dead came out, and it was just like, wow, this is incredible. But yeah, just through those sort of years, and like going to ATP and being turned on to these kind of sort of other American bands that you didn't really know of or hear of, I've sort of I wanted to make the point that I didn't want to just choose American noise rock bands as my thing, even though I evidently am into a lot of that. But I was like, well, this heat a very distinct British sounding or English sounding.
Totally.
To me, you know, whether it's the voice itself or this sort of weird, sparse, sort of austere, like electronics or what's going on, that was really important to have that. And then you've got your sort of like flat out, rinsing, hard American noise rock with Mind Flayer. And then I sort of wanted to talk about some sort of more kind of European stuff. But yeah, it's I wouldn't. I basically, had I not heard, you know, like Liars and Lightning Bolt, and started going to ATP or whatever, I'd, you know, be in a very different situation, I imagine.
Right. Yeah.
As I'm sure, you know, that's the same for so many of us who are, you know, into like weird noisy music. That was just like a big thing. And yeah. I sort of feel like I came to it quite late, because growing up sort of where we did, none of my mates were into that kind of music, or I didn't have the money or friends to go with to those kind of events. So I'd always read about it and be like, wow, that, you know, like Supersonic or ATP or something. And I'm like, wow. And then I you know, didn't go until much later on. I think I actually spoke to you. We did an interview for just before Sly played at Supersonic in 2014.
Yeah.
I think 14 it was, and I'd never been to Supersonic even until then.
Wow.
The only time I'd went was the year we played. Not for the want of, you know, I was lucky to go because we got invited and, you know, paid to get there, but previously I never had the money to travel or stay, or didn't really know anyone up there, or, you know, so it was really exciting to be able to be involved in those festivals that I'd looked at, you know, and admired for years, and it's really exciting. And yeah, I hope that sort of gets to carry on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I find it really interesting, obviously, that you say the fact that, you know, had you not had certain experiences, the trajectory could have been so different, because it's certainly at that time, it's a nascent form of the internet and ubiquity of things, which means that you only really get a few bites of the cherry to be in the right place at the right time in order to be exposed by something which is happening, you know, in these little corners of London, or, you know, that's only really getting traction with a few people. Like, you've got to have a conversation at the right time with the right person in order to twig in the first place that this is your kind of thing.
Definitely.
It's so lucky, isn't it, when you think of it like that?
It is. It's incredible. And, you know, that when you sort of just saying that, I was thinking back to like people in sort of Reading, or, you know, places I've lived where you sort of get these little snatches of different scenes. And I know people don't like using the word scene or whatever. They're like, oh, there is no scene. But in growing up in Fleet and like Hartley and putting on shows there, we are very early bands. I was in a band called Melitza, and we used to play with a band called Kevin, who, like, that, growing up and putting on gigs in football clubs or Fleet Cricket Club, because there was nowhere else to go or anything to do, and we called it No Scene, and that was the, you know, and there was a little like manifesto, and, you know, it was just like our weird bands, underage drinking and playing to your mates and just having the best times. Like, wow, yeah, we can do this, we can put on these things and make these things happen. But yeah, you're lucky to find people, and yeah, in those sort of, in those very early, sort of the early age of the internet, and sort of, and then a couple of years later, like getting on MySpace, or like getting involved with other bands and communicating and stuff. And, you know, when I and zines as well, and you sort of start to share and you're like, oh wow, there are people doing this in their towns,
right?
And then you sort of figure that out, and like, wow, well, maybe I could travel to go and see that, and meet some other people. And I did start doing that. I went up to Nottingham on my own. I'd never been there, or I'd been like once before for a gig. Went up with Dead Sea fucking Scrolls to do some recording, and there was like a hardcore all-dayer at the Old Angel or something. And then I met somebody and was like, oh, maybe I could go to Nottingham. And then I went up to go to see Lightning Bolt and Blood Red Shoes and Lords at the Boat Club, which I believe is closing soon. But yeah, didn't really know anyone, but got chatting to people there and stayed at the promoter's house. And like, wow, yeah, this is happening elsewhere as well, and there's all these other people doing stuff. Might do a bit more. You know, it's just like, if I didn't start doing that, I don't know what I'd be doing. Like,
right?
Who knows? Like,
yeah,
you know, it's that classic thing of everyone from your hometown, they just never leave, and will, you know, stay in the same job and stay in the same town, and seems like they don't have any other interests bar going to work and sitting around. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not, not for me.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's certainly. I associate Brian Chippendale with that time in quite a profound way, because I think he was someone who had a almost cartoonish intensity to him, which was so utterly and immediately appealing that it's like there was no resistance when I heard him drumming for the first time, in that, like, oh, I don't know whether I like this. It is like, it set a lot of things alight. I mean, do you remember how you first came into Lightning Bolt generally? I know you recounted going to see them when they came over here, but how you discovered them
before that. I think this is right. I remember reading an interview with Akara Cult, who still are like one of my favourite ever bands. I saw them at the Winchester Railway Inn on my 16th birthday.
Oh, nice.
And it was still one of the greatest things ever. I think I remember reading an interview with the Akara Cult, and Paul from Akara Cult said, oh yeah, there's this band Lightning Bolt. And I was like, well, if he says they're good, I'm going to check them out.
Yeah.
And then did, and was like, oh my fuck, what is this? They're obviously nothing like Akara Cult. And then through that, just absolutely rinsing up everything on Load, and any band sort of connected with it. I do love Lightning Bolt, of course, but basically anything Chippendale does is just like, I love his visual art as well. And his Black Pus, any interviews or little bits that you'd see just referencing somebody else or someone he's worked with or someone he's into, then I'd go and seek it out. Be like, wow, what's this? And then, do you remember like Wizards as well, which was Gibson's project, which was this mad synth and drums thing. I don't like to use the word side project, but like another associated act.
Yes.
I was just like, yeah, man, like I'm just going to tuck into all of this. So good.
Yeah, sure.
But all that sort of idea of, it comes from that sort of DIY space, and you see the Fort Thunder and having a base to sort of do all these projects and your sort of artistic endeavours, and a place for people to go and put on gigs, like that's massively inspiring. I do sound at New River Studios, and that feels like a small sort of. I read a Google review the other day, and it was said something like, all the best parts of a US style community venue.
Oh,
and
nice.
That's an amazing thing to say, because I do feel like DIY doesn't have to mean it's something is shit or badly done. Everyone's like, oh, it's DIY or it's punk. And that's like a byword for something being a bit naff or like not done very well.
Right.
I still think you can be professional and be DIY, and I think people sort of forget that, because you're like, oh, it's DIY, it's all right, and you sort of let yourself off a bit. It's like, yeah, but the PA isn't on properly or something, you haven't plugged it in, or like this mic isn't working. I was like, it's DIY, it's all right. I was like, well, so I still like that sensibility, and it's important to come from that place, but to apply it to a bit more of a sort of professional setting, I think is good. And that's what I'm running a theatre space now, and I sort of it is obviously like no budget, but you try and make it work to the best of, I feel it's important to at least like, I want people, and especially when I do sound for people as well, I want them to have a good experience, and I want it to be enjoyable for the people that come and pay, but I want the bands to enjoy it as well. And there are so many stories of like fucking awful sound technicians, or this it is always a man. The sound man was a dick, or the sound man. Somebody the other day was telling me a story whereby they'd sound checked and their guitar was out of tune, maybe willfully so, But after the sound check, because it's not in standard or whatever, and then the sound man came up and like tuned her fucking guitar for her. Yeah, without asking, without anything. He was like, "Oh yeah, I tuned your guitar." I was like, "What?" Like, that's prick. Just so grim. It's like, what are you even thinking of where you think that's okay?
Yeah. Oh
like,
God.
You know, it's not. Let alone whether, you know, it was supposed to sound like that or not. Just, man, you know, ridiculous. So anyway, my point being, yeah, don't be a dick and just try and tidy your cables up or something. It's not hard. You know, just I just feel like putting on DIY shows or you know, running things in that way is all well and good, but it's not hard to, you know, make the experience better for everyone involved by just doing it a bit better.
Right. You know? Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
And we've all played awful shows, and you're just like, man, this could, you know, just yeah.
Especially when it's, you know, all the elements are in place. There's just one that's out of joint, and it just completely discolours the experience. I mean, I think of playing in Brighton once with Swallowing, and Dean, obviously, you know Dean. He was setting up, and the sound man just came over and yelled quite loudly, just said, "Look, if he's going to stand that close to the amplifier, it will feed back." All right.
Yeah, classic. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've heard that story before. I can't remember if it was from you or not, actually, but that's totally great. I love that. Did you ever go to Wallfire Festival in Winchester?
No.
Well, not even Winchester. It was Woodmancott. So it was like on the between Basingstoke and Winchester. This guy Corin, who went to QMC, put it on.
Wow.
And like Fuck Buttons played one year.
What?
And Stig Noise, like Sly played.
What's it called? Wolf Fire?
Wool, as in sheep's wool. Fire.
Wow.
But I think it only ran for like 3 years, maybe. And I was like, yes, there's this rad festival happening in this amazing field. And I remember putting up a picture on MySpace. Somebody had taken a picture of me and the sound man, like, coming over. It was night time, right, so everything was dark, but he'd come up to the desk, and we set up in the middle of the field, like in front of the stage. I say stage, it was a tent, there was no stage. And just being like, yeah, keep it out of the red, yeah. And I was like, that, you know, I know how to work a mixer, but also I know full well, and you know full well, that it's noisy stuff, and you're going to turn it down instantly. And that happens so much. That's where, like, the idea of us always bringing our own amps came from, because as soon as somebody goes, "Oh, you're a noise band," or, you know, they just write it off instantly, and then they will turn your front of house sound down or off, which has also happened.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh no, it's, you know, you can't do that, or it can't sound like that." I'm like, well, it can, and it is, it does. But then, so that's why we started bringing our own, you know, backline and amps, because it needs to, you know, we've talked about that sort of physicality of the sound before.
Yeah.
And I want to feel the air pushing from the speakers, and I want people to be surrounded by that, and it needs to be that loud.
Yes.
And it loses so much in translation if it's not. So if you're at the mercy of the sound tech, they're just going to turn you off, or and so it loses everything. You're like, oh right. Yeah. And we've played shows where the power is cut out before, but you can't turn the drums off. So if you've got drums and sax and whatever other acoustic noisemakers you've got going, and then that, until somebody puts another 50p in the meter or whatever, that's what's going to happen. So that, you know, that's fine. But yeah, I do feel like it sort of needs to happen. And it was really great listening to again Lasse's show, because he was talking about something I do as well. So when I do solo shows, and I don't think I got it from him, it just seemed to make sense to my brain that I play at the back of the room as well, listening to the front of house PA sound.
Yeah.
So I don't want any monitoring. I want to hear what people are hearing. in the room.
Yeah.
And I can adjust any stereo stuff accordingly, or I want to hear that in the same way. And I did a show at New River Studios where I was working as well, but I was asked to play on the bill, so I was like doing my own sound. But I did make a different distinction by setting up in front of the sound desk and listening back to the PA, and then when I finished my set I went and did sound for everyone else. But yeah, it's important to have have that full sort of dynamic range, otherwise it loses so much.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a problem, isn't it, when you have people whose job it is to essentially maintain an idea of how to make things sound good, which for 99% of the time, as a sound technician, that's spot on, and it can be quite a consistent framework. And then to have people who basically exist to run right against that grain suddenly becomes quite difficult. Definitely. It's in my professional job as a sound technician, like for other people, I want I because I've had that experience, I don't want I want people to feel comfortable in their performance and technical setup, so that, because I understand that it's so disappointing when you've done like all this, you've made this setup and this music, and you want it to have that full sort of range and to perform it in the way that you see appropriate and how you want it to sound. And I'm there to help people do that, and I want them to enjoy the experience, or as much as it is possible to enjoy it. Sometimes it's like absolutely horrendous music, but for some people that's a good thing. Well, we should talk about your final record, Matt. It's if you could give me the name of it, and then also a little bit about why it's important as well.
Chromosome Gun, yes, Ultralid. Again, it's on Load actually, which I totally forgot about. But Ultralid are a band who I came to through Nogsakt, another Norwegian act, and I believe Kjetil, the bass player, plays in both bands. And I can't remember if you were there. Did you see them in Bumbles in Bournemouth?
Ultralid.
Because there were only about 6 people there.
I don't think I was one of them. When was this?
In about 2010.
Oh, was it Nogsakt or Ultralid?
Both. They played together.
I was with some people who really wanted to pre-drink, but they pre-drank through the show and then arrived with about 3 minutes to go, and then
man,
so it's more than £1 a minute really that I paid for that show. But I was so gutted because I'd not really heard Nogsakt before, and then arrived as like, this is so my thing, and then it stopped. Wow, that's an amazing lineup.
I can't remember who else played. It might have been like one of Alan's bands or something, or it may have even just been the 2 bands. But again, like that idea of going to a sort of town like Bournemouth and not really knowing anyone there, and they're putting on fucking Nogsakt and Ultralid. Like, what? Okay, I used to, like, amazing. And it still is one of the greatest gigs I've ever been to. I loved it. It was so cool. And in a place like Bumbles as well, which, as I remember it, was like an 80s club that hadn't been decorated since, basically, and looked like it had already closed down, but somehow they're getting to put on these incredible, like, European noisy bands, and everyone's just fine with that happening. It's like, yes, this is perfect. And just it was crushingly loud. It was totally amazing. But seeing Ultralid in particular, I knew Nogsakt, but Ultralid playing, and they've got I think Chettle has been this guy Chettle Moster, I think, plays sax for them, or he wasn't the original sax player, but did join after. But yeah, he's playing like this massive baritone sax through like a Mooga Fuga and all kinds of other stuff, and I was like, what is going on here? I'd never seen that, you know. People playing a sax through pedals. Like, it doesn't sound like that, but it's this incredible force that's coming out, right. And it's really exciting. Like, yeah, this is incredible.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I picked up that record, and it does, again, sort of like with Deceit, it's not particularly my favourite record of theirs, or my taste has maybe changed a bit, but it does have the sort of all the elements that I really like about them. There's the more sort of kind of sparse sort of abstract numbers, and then there's like absolutely like hammering sort of mad distorted riffs or something as well.
Yeah.
And it's just like, wow, this is wild, you know. Sort of the same reaction I had with Mind Flayer, really, and all these records I'm talking about it's something that's just either had been new to me and provoked such a sort of exciting reaction. I was like, yeah, that's why I find those, you know, inspiring or exciting, and wanted to talk about them. But you know, there are a million bands like that, and I wanted to choose Ultralid because, yeah, they're a group sort of I've come to, and then again sort of seeking out all the related projects like the Mohar as well, who I also saw in Bournemouth, and I remember there was about 6 people there as well then.
I think I was there at that one, maybe.
Yeah, and this was like, yeah, before I knew you. And there we are in the room.
Yeah. Is it where they had their like ridiculous light show?
Stuff.
Yeah. Oh my god. All synchronized with everything.
Like absolute assault.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then and like picking stuff up on like Rune Gramophone, and you know, all this kind of incredible, like Norwegian noise stuff. It's like, where has this come from? And I didn't know anything about it at all. And then I sort of followed up, and then you hear kind of everyone's related projects, all their solo work, and it's such a and then I only sort of heard like Super Silent in the last couple of years, and really got into their music, and I was like, oh right, what is it? I don't know the answer to this. It's totally rhetorical. I was like, what is it about like Norwegian music that is making them all do this, and it's all totally mint? I don't know. Something in the water.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Definitely, because I went to Lizzie and I went to Oslo a few years back, and there was happened to be Nogsagd playing at a cafe.
Oh wow,
Blitz.
Yes, I've been there.
Nice.
Yeah, it's what I went. Well, we did a tour with Bruxa Maria and Mo in Norway like a couple of years ago, but it like we played in I think we went to Halden first, which is Guro's like hometown, I think, and then I met the lads off of Brutal Blues a couple of years after, and I said, we played in Halden actually, and they're like, why the fuck did you play there? Like that's like a touring band like stopping off in Basingstoke,
right?
Like, and then like nobody goes there. Why did you play there? And he was like, did anyone like? Was there anyone? I was like, no. But you know, we were on tour in Norway, so I was having like time of my life, amazing. But the locals seemed to think that was a joke to go and play there. But we did play at Blitz in Oslo on the last night, so that was very good.
Oh, amazing!
But yeah, I would have loved to have seen Nogsagd there. But yeah, I'd love to go back. I think we're gonna Jan like his new thing, Burning Axis. They're coming over. I think we're going to do some stuff together.
Oh my
maybe
God.
In October, and then I'm hoping that we can go over there again. But yeah, we'll see. Well, yeah, Sly have never been, so maybe one day.
That would be amazing. Yeah. So with this Ultralid record, so I've this is the first time I'd heard it, but obviously it clicked instantly.
Yeah.
because as you say, the terrain is like so diverse on this record. But is there a favorite track for you where you're like, all right, this is really getting me buzzed?
Well, when I first, I had forgotten the title, but so I was like, oh, what one am I thinking of? But actually, then I go back to it. I'm like, I'm just looking at the titles now, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that they're all mint. And there's like glottality is just a total rinser, because it's that glottal like sax sound, and it's really sort of forceful and totally rinsing. Like and that sound of the really sort of, there's really great heavy drum sound. I mean, like Nog sax, the kind of the rhythm section, it's just hard as anything. And then you've got this wild sax blowing all over it. I was like, yes, that's such a great combination. This amazing sort of like, it's not sort of just sort of abstract noise. It is kind of tight, but it's super heavy as well. Really exciting.
And I mean, is this something you think of? So say, bringing saxophone into the fold with Sly, and having now put out the first record that features saxophone with Sly as well. I mean, is this bands like Ultralid? Do you think about them in the context of what you're doing, and like, is this kind of a touch point for you in terms of how you see Sly?
Yeah, I think so. Not necessarily in the delivery or the sonic sort of outcome, but certainly the elements of that. That's a kind of inspiration, and it just makes sense to sort of bring that together. But it's important that I still don't want to have that sort of element of guitars or whatever. The sax itself can still be quite. I was going to say something really wanky then. It's like, oh yeah, but it's the space between the notes, or the movement between the notes. It's not just like the playing of the like gunning out a scale. It's just like this. There's a bit more sort of. It's a bit more malleable and sort of fluid, and you can like, and playing with James in particular, you can go from like really intense sort of like fortissimo, like blowing mental stuff, to really sort of fast, like it's quite nimble, or he's got real high register sort of blowing, or there's just these intense low end things. Like, man, he's just such a wonderful player, and that fits very well, I think, with what the rest of us are doing. And it was never like a thing to we just were like, oh yeah, we can play together, let's see how it goes. So he came and did a show with us on New Year's Eve. We played in the brewery in East London, which was amazing. So we played at midnight, like the bell,
wow.
the ball drops, all the balloons fall from the sky. We just go in super hard, and there's an amazing picture of Jim just like screaming down his sax. And then, but there's people like kissing in the background. There's some people who look totally miserable. It's such an amazing captured moment. Like, there you go. And it went, it went really well. And then we. I really enjoy his company, and I love his music, and it feels like that's a good fit. And we've done another record since. But yeah, so that's where it's at.
One last question I had for you, Matt, is if you really want to listen to a record and you're like, right, it's just going to be me and this record for a bit, I'm going to give it as much attention as I can muster, where would you go to listen to an album to do that?
Does it have to be a place that exists in reality?
Be utterly
or is this a more of an abstract? Oh, okay, so it's not like a desert island sort of disc thing. I have to go to a space where it, where would be my ideal listening position.
I mean, take it however you want. You can go for like how you actually do it, or if you could just float off to some dreamy ideal. Up to you.
Yeah, well, that's what listening to music is. So no, I do. I like to sit in my room with my record player and put it on the platter and listen sort of properly whilst not doing much else. That's the sort of the best way. But I have gotten into more having stuff on my phone and trying to listen to stuff that I might not be able to get on, pick up the record easily or whatever. So your sort of listening habits change. It's hard, vinyl is expensive, and well, new vinyl is. I tend to buy sort of second hand a lot more. But if I want to sort of check out new stuff, or I've started using the Bandcamp app more to sort of try and check out other stuff. Yeah. But my favourite way to do it is to get the record and there's that sort of tangible thing of putting it on the platter. Maybe the wrong side or maybe the wrong speed, but that's part of the fun, It's totally great. But I like to sit down and sort of try and concentrate on it. I feel like if you're sort of invested a bit more, it's easier to listen and sort of pick out bits, and when you've got a nice set of speakers and an amp or whatever, it does totally bring out details that you might miss if you're consuming it in a different way. I do personally, I feel like that's the best way to sort of take it in.
Which is why maybe people should head to the Bandcamp first and look to pick up the record before reverting to their favourite streaming platform, right?
Absolutely. But whatever you're into.
Yes, sure. So Matt, this has been wicked. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. This has been awesome.
Nice one, man. Thank you very much for having me. Nice to chat to you.
And just to remind people, if they want to keep up to speed with what you're doing, where's the best place for them to be going?
Come and see us at a gig. That would be the best way to do it. And if we aren't playing a gig, then email us and ask us to play one, and then we'll come to you. But if you can't do that, then we've got Google Sly the Family Drone and you'll find it.
Excellent. Well, thanks once again, and to everyone listening, I will see you next time. Bye bye.